My research in grad school was use of computers in government, and I found a company that would take someone like me with a liberal arts undergraduate degree, graduate degree in public policy, and teach me the technical skills. And that was Arthur Andersen, which became Andersen Consulting, which became Accenture. And from day one, they set the expectation that I needed to build relationships with my peers, with my customers, with my boss, with my direct reports, and that people I was working with that first year, 22 years later, might be CIOs. You might be a CIO. And that's exactly what happened. The guy I started with became a CIO of a large agency here in Austin. At the time, I became Chief Information Officer at the University of Texas at Austin. And we still stay in touch. So these are relationships that span years and decades. And I was taught that from day one. And to be a mentee and be a mentor the whole time, the whole journey. And, I think just that cultural value of helping people grow and building, they hired me to be a partner, not to be a programmer. So, how could I build more partners behind me? So when I retired, we have plenty of partners taking over the firm.
This is the Play Your Position podcast, where we huddle up, call the plays, and inspire you to run your ball into the end zone. Are you ready to score more game-winning touchdowns in your life, business, and career? Then listen up, because it's game time, baby. Now, here's your host, Mary Lou Kaiser.
Hello, Team PYP. Welcome to the Play Your Position podcast. I'm your host, Mary Lou Kaiser. I am the author of The River Only Runs One Way and The Far Unlit Unknown, 2 books available now at your favorite online retailer. Definitely go check them out. And with the holidays upon us, they make great gifts. Today, my guest here on PYP is Brad Englert, a seasoned IT leader with some great stories to share about leadership, especially in a high-tech world. Brad was a CIO for the University of Texas at Austin for more than a decade. He helped lead the transition from a clunky, outdated software system to a state-of-the-art cloud-based system that everyone bought into and loves to this day. One of the things that was really fascinating about this conversation is the inside point of view of running a large IT system. This is something that those of us who aren't running IT systems take for granted every day. So you're definitely going to want to listen to his insights about that. He is also the author of the book, Spheres of Influence, which sheds light on why traditional networking doesn't really work, along with other poignant pieces of wisdom about leadership and getting along with people you work with and building those relationships that can lead to win-win situations. One reader has described the book this way: Spheres of Influence brilliantly illustrates that in the game of life, the strongest moves are made through the power of genuine connections. Throughout our conversation, Brad shares what you can do to build those strong connections without attending glorified cocktail parties where everyone is out for themselves and very little business gets done. Before we get started, I just want to remind you that you can connect with me online at LinkedIn, on Instagram. You can visit my main website, maryloukaiser.com. Be sure to get on my email list, sign up for my newsletter, Field Notes. That's where you are going to always be in the know about the latest and greatest things going on with the podcast and my books and other creative ventures that I'm always getting my hands into. You can find Brad online on LinkedIn for sure. And in the show notes, there'll be some other links to get his book and his website and all that stuff. But right now, if you could press pause and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts, that really helps. And I appreciate it so very much. So That's the intro for today. If you are ready for kickoff, team, I know I am. Let's go. So, Team PYP, I am here today with my guest, my starting quarterback, Brad Englert, who is coming to us from
Austin, Texas.
Woohoo! All right, Austin, Texas, great football country down there in Austin, Texas. And Brad is here to share with us some things about his leadership journey, his work life, his new book, Spheres of Influence, which he's going to talk about, and whatever else comes up today. So, Brad, just to kick things off, why don't we get started with you telling us the story about when you first got the call to leadership. How old were you? What was going on in your life at the time? And connect the dots between then and where you are today.
So it started in high school when I was elected the student council president, and I had served in student council prior years, and that was a lot of fun. And then I was selected to be a Rotary Exchange student in Australia. And so I was in Australia for a year and really was representing the country and talked to 20, 30 different Rotary clubs. And it was just a lot of fun. And then I decided to go to undergraduate school in beautiful liberal arts college in Illinois. And I was elected to be the student board member on the board of trustees. So that was a lot of fun. Of course, small school, always dealing with money issues, but
Sure.
they're still around. So, and then I got to, I started working for the federal government and went to graduate school at the University of Texas at Austin and was working full-time, going to graduate school part-time. And I was the payroll manager for this federal agency, 6,000 people. And we decided to move from punch cards to online data entry. So I had this programmer come to me, and he had the white shirt with short sleeves, the black skinny tie, plastic pencil protector, and yes, the big thick glasses. And I said, I don't want my people typing 8888, for 2 weeks for 6,000 people twice a month. I just want it to default to eights. And he said, no, I can't do it.
What?
So he scurried off and he scurried back the next week, and he goes, okay, I can do it. So I realized I needed to get some technical training so a guy like that wouldn't hold me hostage my entire career.
Sure.
And my research in grad school was use of computers in government, and I found a company that would take someone like me with a liberal arts undergraduate degree, graduate degree in public policy, and teach me the technical skills. And that was Arthur Andersen, which became Andersen Consulting, which became Accenture. And from day one, they set the expectation that I needed to build relationships with my peers, with my customers, with my boss, with my direct reports, and that people I was working with that first year, 22 years later, might be CIOs. You might be a CIO. And that's exactly what happened. The guy I started with became a CIO of a large agency here in Austin at the time I became Chief Information Officer at the University of Texas at Austin. And we still stay in touch. So
Sure.
These are relationships that span years and decades. And I was taught that from day one, and to be a mentee and be a mentor the whole time, the whole journey. And, I think just that cultural value of helping people grow and building more, they hired me to be a partner, not to be a programmer. So, how could I build more partners behind me? So when I retired, we have plenty of partners taking over the firm.
Well, it sounds like that you have been a really attentive student, that you listened when people guided you and said, hey, this is how you're going to succeed here. The relationship is everything. And so fast forward to today, this book came out last March, it looked like, or last spring.
Mhm.
And what compelled you to put your thought leadership together into a book? Why did you feel it necessary to share the wisdom and spheres of influence?
Well, I thought there was a gap in the way people talk about networking. I found it to be superficial,
Hmm.
transactional. I've been to many networking events, and I've yet I own 40 years to get a customer out of that. And
Right there with
so,
you.
so I wanted to really share with aspiring leaders and established leaders, how do you build these business relationships that are authentic and that one, make your work life more rewarding, but two, you're going to be more effective. And there are three principles. After I finished the manuscript, I stepped back, and in every business relationship, your boss, direct reports, executive leaders, all your staff, customers, peers, and influencers, strategic vendor partners, there are three principles. And one is understand their goals and aspirations. Just ask. Set and manage expectations. And then third, genuinely care about their success. If you
Hmm.
do that with your boss and your direct reports and your customers, you'll be successful. And so I still mentor two or three people at, at graduate school I went to, and Austin Women for Technology. I have a mentee there. But that really didn't scale. So the book was a way to capture all those stories
Sure.
and help people grow in their career, which I enjoy. So now I'm doing mentoring and coaching.
Nice, nice. So what are some of the gaps in leadership that you're noticing in today's world? I mean, you've been a professional across a very, I would say, revolutionary time. The advent of the internet, the whole
Mhm.
888, data input, to
Mhm.
now we're in artificial intelligence is really coming on strong, and the
Mhm.
tools keep coming out every single day. And yet at the same time, we are human beings still operating in an analog world last time I checked. So when you're working with some of your mentees, and if you could share with listeners, what are some of the big gaps that either they're bringing up with you or that you've noticed, pattern wise, beyond just networking events typically aren't that great
Right.
unless you just want to have a good time at a cocktail hour. you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think my advice would be to slow down. People are moving so quickly. They're trying to multitask, which you and I know is very unproductive. Yeah,
Hmm.
nothing worse than having a meeting with someone on their phone. It's terrible. So I'd say turn the phone upside down and slow down. Take the time to understand what people are trying to achieve. And
Hmm.
people want to share that. When I was the boss, if I had a direct report ask me what my goals and aspirations were, I'd happily share that. And same thing, knowing what my boss's goals and aspirations were. Some people are scared to ask, or they're afraid
Mm,
to ask, or too busy. They're too busy to stop and ask. And I
sure.
think, that's really a fallacy. One of my direct reports read the manuscript and she said, what you did for me is you made me slow down. And so I was rushing to solutions, rushing to the answer. But once I slowed down and better understood the problem, I was more effective.
Yeah. So I'm gathering from that there's a pressure that exists today to move quickly.
Hmm.
We read about that. At least I have. This, we don't have time to, mess around in the lab, so to speak, and try to figure it out because the market demands, right? Our competitors are trying to, outbeat us or whatever.
Hmm.
And yet you're seeing that when people do take the time to slow down, take a step back, that more gets done. Is that what
Right.
I'm hearing?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, you avoid misunderstandings. You
Hmm.
avoid conflicts that didn't even have to happen because you got out of the office and told people you cared. And
Yeah.
so a professor who I'd worked with 15 years prior, a crusty guy, been at the university 40 years. And I said, give me some advice. He goes, get out of the office and let people know you give a damn. And that was the best advice, because
Interesting.
you can stay in your office and be busy, 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 but is that the best use of your time? So I looked across the university and said, who are my peers and influencers that I need to be working with? And there are about 7 to 10 of those peers. It's a big place, 54,000 students, 4,000 faculty, 21,000 staff. But I
Wow.
reached out to my peers because we're all trying to make the enterprise work. And IT is marbled in everything. So from public safety to the football stadium. so,
Sure. Sure.
so, I would put on my calendar every 4 to 6 weeks, I'd go ride the circuit and not ask them to come to me. I would go to their office. That would mean I'd walk across campus and get to see students, see my customers, see my staff. Same thing with my direct reports, my one-on-ones every week in their office. Their staff would see me come to their boss, and like clockwork. And I would talk to people as I'm walking through the workspace.
Right.
And, it's showing the flag. It's, you're not in the ivory tower expecting them to come supplicate. And my boss, once a week, I would get together and we'd talk about, what are the expectations going forward. So just putting it on the calendar, that's easy. And I asked my direct reports to do the same. They had 7 to 10 relationships with their peers. And that was basically about 80 to 100 relationships. That was our nervous system. We
Mm.
were getting feedback of what we were doing well, what we were doing wrong. One of my peers called and had a rumor. The rumor was that we bought this new training system, and the rumor was we didn't have enough licenses for the students who have to be trained before they can work in a lab to get the federal funding. I said,
Huh.
that is a great rumor. I'll go check it out. Checked it out, and it turned out we did account for the licenses for the students. But if I hadn't been out there talking to people, I would not have known that. And it could have blown up into a bigger problem.
Definitely. So, what are some of the spheres of influence we need to be thinking about? Nurturing, generating, letting go? Are there any spheres that are, I don't know what the opposite of influence would be, but are, again, under this leadership umbrella, what would you tell the listeners to
I'd
think
start
about?
with those relationships closest to you. That's your inner sphere.
Hmm.
It's your boss, it's your direct reports, it's all your staff, it's executive leaders, and just be intentional. So never have a one-on-one without an agenda. Get their input on the agenda, and you know, really have a dialogue, a two-way dialogue with the customers and peers and influencers and vendor partners, strategic vendor partners. What are they trying to achieve? I had a vice provost who wanted to change the way courses were delivered in the classroom. Transformation. She wanted to have the lectures recorded and then discussion in the classroom. Well, the tool we had, our learning management system, was old, clunky, buggy. My tech guy was erratic. The vendor's tech guy was erratic.
Hmm. Hmm.
And we really, the student email could not securely be connected to the learning management system. And the
Oh,
vendor was very unresponsive, would only show up once a year for their money, their annual check, which went up 10% every year. And they just didn't care about us.
wow.
So we knew we needed to go to the marketplace. And the vice provost had her staff, faculty, and students evaluate the products. They picked the next generation learning management system, which was standards based, so you could plug tools in hours securely. It was designed for the cloud, meaning no servers
Mm-hmm.
on premise. It's all in the cloud. And it took 2 years to move the campus to that new capability. But the beauty was, since the students and faculty picked it, there was a natural pull. And because they hated the old system being clunky and slow,
Yeah.
they were quick to let that go. And when we took the decision to the president and the leadership team, the president said, well, what do the faculty and students think? Well, sir, they selected it and unanimously endorse us moving in this direction. So the vice provost and I, because I took the time to go meet with her and understand what she was trying to achieve, and I was trying to solve a problem of a buggy system with an unresponsive vendor, we ended up with a new capability that helped her achieve the transformation. And I had a strategic vendor partner who actually cared about us. When we went live, I got a call from the senior vice president for sales asking how we're doing.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he didn't have to do that.
No, but that,
Yeah, he
yeah.
cared about us. He cared about us. And he knew that if he could make us happy, other large Research One universities would be happy, which is exactly what happened.
Yeah. So I'm curious, is that system still in place or has it evolved since then? It's still in place.
That's the beauty of the cloud. It continually updates.
Yeah.
And being standard based, it's been in place for 10 years now.
Yeah.
And, many large campuses have followed. But we took a chance, but things were so bad with the current vendor, we really had no choice. We had to move. And it helped us achieve the educational goal.
Yeah. It sounds like a win-win for everybody on campus. And the fact that several different groups were co-creating a solution
Yes.
added to the buy-in.
Yeah. And, thousands of things could have gone wrong.
Oh, yeah.
But we had this dialogue going with every department and contacts in both our teams, if it was technical issue or just how do I teach with this tool. And when we completed the project, an email was sent to the president of the university, copied the vice provost and me, and I just closed my eyes. I said, I'm getting fired. That's never a good thing. And it was from all the contacts in the departments praising how well we work together and we're patient and work with the vendor to change things. I mean, it was amazing.
Yeah. Well, that's a good story of what, again, can happen when goals are aligned. People actually ask each other questions. People are willing to take a risk because bringing in any new system, there's risk involved.
The old one was in place for 15 years. So, a lot of inertia there.
A lot of inertia, which is one of the biggest killers of any kind of leadership initiative, is when, especially if there's a attitude of, well, we've always done things like this around here and this way. And because you're in the technology space, from firsthand experience how quickly things change.
Right.
So let's fast forward to today, what you're seeing. I know you're retired, right? You did say that.
That's correct.
But you're still involved with coaching and mentoring people who are in workplaces where innovation and change seems to happen every other day. There's something else that's new. There's something else to, in the field of vision that a person has to pay attention to. What are your thoughts about what's going on with the AI revolution? And again, you can attribute it to where you once worked at the university, you're still affiliated with it, or just in general. What are you seeing going on? And then follow up to that is what excites you about AI and what concerns you about AI?
Well, I think AI portends the type of change that happened with the internet. And you recall the 90s when I think it was called Mosaic, was the first browser.
I remember Mosaic and Netscape.
Yeah. And just, you know, it took a while to become useful, but I think it'll be the same with AI. I think it's exciting. You need guardrails. I think the White House issued guidelines for use of AI, and it's actually an interesting read. It's not complicated. It's not technical, but I think it's going to be a real game changer. I think it'll free up people to do more interesting work, and just like email has and other tools.
Is there anything that concerns you about AI when you look again at the large landscape of as younger people step into leadership roles, evolve with an organization or a company? Anything that we need to be paying attention to?
Well, what kept me up at night for 8 years as the chief information officer were the bad actors trying to break into our systems. And we had state actors, so China, Iran, North Korea, Eastern European cartels, 24/7 attacks. Our most sensitive research was actually in a building not connected to the internet. It was a moat. So
interesting.
I think bad actors are going to take advantage of AI to scam people. We moved to, we had a lot of phishing attacks and people lost their paychecks. So we implemented multi-factor authentication. We'll need some tools like that, but there's AI tools can create deep fakes that look or sound like some of your family members, and they're going to be asking for money. And, that worries me a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's already happened, hasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's halftime here at the Play Your Position podcast, and we've got ourselves a great game. While you're up grabbing another snack and topping off your favorite beverage, make sure to subscribe to the show so you never miss another play. PYP is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever great podcasts can be found. Now, let's get back to the game.
As with any new thing, like the internet when it came along, and now with AI, and social media, which was obviously part of the internet, it was a subcategory of the big internet. And in a way, AI is too, but its applications are different from my understanding. And I don't consider myself an expert in AI. I don't know if anybody is. I'm fascinated by it, and I'm always interested to hear what other people think, what your point of view is about AI, particularly with respect to the leadership conversation. Now, you did mention that the White House has issued, statements about governance, guardrails. We live in a country where government plays a significant role in our day-to-day life. And then we also have free enterprise where companies who have leaders are operating, sometimes it seems like without guardrails. For anybody people who are listening are interested in leadership, what are some good basic guardrails that individuals need to think about when it comes to their own leadership journey, whether they're leading a large institution like the University of Texas at Austin. Austin was the name of my cat. It's also the stadium for University of Oregon. Go Ducks. Sorry. When we think about innovation and always evolving, right? There's excitement about anything's possible, but at the same time, we need to rein some things in. So I'm just curious, as somebody who's been a leader for as long as you have, Brad, what are some just basic guardrails that individuals need to consider when it comes to practicing leadership?
I would say that you need to experiment with the tools. you need to encourage experimentation with the tools. And I would have my guardrail would be have your chief information security office actively involved in all those initiatives. You can't shy away from it. You need to work with the tools, and there are different tools for different applications, whether it's visual or verbal or whatever. But a lot of these are going to be baked into existing technology tools as well. But I think it goes back to worrying about the security is what I would look out for. Encourage the use, encourage the experimentation, but do it in a secure way.
Do you think that same advice applies to parents of children who are growing up with these tools readily available through their phones?
Sure.
And it's a world, you and I didn't grow up in that world.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you and I didn't grow up with the phone in our hand and AI becoming a reality. It was a very different world. So I don't know if you have children or grandchildren, but do you think that same kind of approach? What about parents who are battling children who, you know, want to be on all the different apps and have that crazy access? How do parents help their kids understand things that, you know, children's brains haven't quite reached yet in terms of that greater perspective of it's okay to do this, but not so much over here?
Well, I have two boys. They're now young men, so much more technology savvy than I was at their ages. But if I was a parent, I would look closely at the parental tools and not just blindly open it up to be used. I think schools are starting to set policy of how AI can be used in the classroom, both K-12 and the universities. So they're not shutting it down, but they're providing safer access to some of these tools and teaching, you know, how to use them.
So you are seeing that happening.
But I would be, you know, in general, I have been professionally paranoid. It's just so I would not. I would be careful with. I wouldn't just open the barn door.
Yeah. So you are somebody who's adopted technology. You have a YouTube channel. I was checking it out. Tell us about these Bradisms that are on there. There's one in particular that I found really interesting. I'll lead with that, and then you can fill in. It's the one about note taking.
Yep.
I like that. Tell listeners that story.
Well, my very first engagement was the Navajo Nation. And we were helping the Navajo Nation in Window Rock, Arizona, create an IT strategy for all their government entities. And so my boss and I were interviewing all the executive leaders of the tribe. And the very first interview, he pulls me aside and says, "Englert, I didn't bring you here for your good looks. In the future, take copious notes." And oh boy, I still take copious notes.
Yeah. And what is the benefit of taking copious notes? Because again, I think with this, it's become, I'm not going to say lazy. It's different, right? I'm a note taker.
Right.
I'm a pen to paper kind of person. Obviously that was something that you were encouraged to do. What is the value of taking copious notes? What did you walk away from that situation kind of going, okay, duly noted?
So number one is you're listening more intently and looking to separate the wheat from the chaff. And number two, the physical act of writing or typing, you retain more. And I think that's, you know, well known that having that physical movement with thinking helps your retention. So those were the two.
Yeah, the two things. Did you handwrite your book or did you type it?
Did
you dictate it?
I typed it.
Okay. And how long did it take you from start to finish?
5 years.
5 years.
So I retired from the university and I found a publisher, and their approach was you don't write one page until you have the full outline. Well, that just spoke to
Oh.
me because I'm a planner. I don't build a
Mm-hmm.
house without a blueprint. I don't write a program without a design.
Right,
So
right.
my editor and I spent probably 6 months working on, I had all the stories, but how do
Mm-hmm.
I organize them? And so, you know, 6 to 9 months getting the outline. And then I jumped in, and the goal was around 40,000 words. I got to
Mm-hmm.
18,000 words and kind of hit a wall. And the wall was the pandemic. And, you know, things just kind of went sideways. And she has a young child. So I said, Lindsay, I'll call you in a year or two. You know, it's like just trying to school the child, you know, which
Sure,
terrible.
sure.
And then when pandemic waned, I thought about it every day. So it was percolating all the time. And I would jot notes down every once in a while. And I just then knocked it out in about a year and a half, and
Okay,
went through, you know, several edits with the editing team. And then I shared it with
sure.
people who worked with me and got their input. And this woman who was a direct report at the university said, "Oh, Brad, you forgot this story. You forced me to go meet with an IT director who hated us. And you said you'd rather have her in the tent than outside the tent throwing rocks at us." And I forgot all about that. And I said, over time, she met with her, they both met once a month. Over time, as we got better, more predictable, better service delivery, more transparent, and she built that trust. 9 months later, she had an advocate. And her boss, who was distrustful of central IT because there was some bad behavior in the past, you know, which we apologize for. And we said we want to improve that relationship going forward. So it's just, but I forgot all about uh, that story.
Yeah, and stories make your points come to life. People can relate to another department not liking your department for maybe sins of somebody else.
Oh,
You know, it wasn't even,
in some cases, 10 years ago. It's like I
yeah,
literally would say, can we stop talking about this?
yeah,
That was bad. I'm sorry it was bad, but that's not how
yes,
we're going to be working going forward. Just let it go.
right. Yeah. Yeah, which to me is a tenet of leadership. You leaders let it go.
Mm,
You have to. Because if
mhm.
you hold on to especially negative energy, whether it's because you felt wronged in the past or somebody betrayed you somehow, and it happens, you know, we're not proud
Right.
that these things happen, but especially in an organization when somebody gets a promotion and they step into a new role and they're in a department and they don't necessarily know the bad blood that may have existed, but it's still simmering with people who were there and experienced that. When I was working for other people, I was actually in higher ed as well. And it astounded me how some people would not let
Yeah,
go
that's right.
of things that happened years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, why are you carrying that around? How is that serving you? But I'm not them and I don't know.
So when you
So,
do take over an organization, though, that is a perfect opportunity to understand what's working well and what's not
mhm,
working well. And I
right.
sat down with my direct reports and said, okay, we're moving forward. We actually created a strategy for moving forward. And even more importantly, we articulated the values of the organization that had not been articulated before. And the values came from our strategy where we talked to 300 or 400 people on campus and
Mhm.
said, learned what they wanted from us. And what they
Yeah.
wanted was they They wanted to have high quality services. They wanted customer focused partnerships, not we're the central group dictating to you. They
Right.
asked, how do we make decisions? We make data driven, customer focused decisions. They wanted collaboration. They wanted cooperation. They
Mhm.
wanted communication. So I wrote a blog once a week for 8 years. Well, why would I do that? Well, I wanted to send messages to 330 people on my team. And it also went out to 300 to 400 people across campus interested in IT and other campuses,
Mhm.
IT at UT. And I would talk about those values. The number one value on the list was put family first. Now, why would I
Mm.
do that? Well, I live in Austin, Texas. I'm competing for technical resources in a city with many multinational IT companies, hundreds of startups. I can't
Mhm.
compete on salary alone. But what I can guarantee is an 8-hour workday. And I would model that behavior. And I would take vacations and I would go to training. I would not answer email all hours of the night. And I would ask them not to do that. And I would say, if you have a school play, go to the school play. If you have a doctor's appointment, go to the doctor's appointment. Why? Because we have 330 people here who will back you up. If you're sick, stay home. We don't want any heroics. And the culture changed from a heroics, rewarding fire drills and heroics to a more proactive, customer oriented culture. But that took articulating the values, reinforcing those through quarterly meetings and the blog. And then uh, I, I could also use it to give kudos to staff. Hey, I heard, people doing great. Kudos to the customer. More than one occasion, apologizing, because thousands of things can go wrong every day. And my message was, it's not if they'll go wrong, it's when they'll go wrong and how we deal with it. And let's deal with it in transparency, quick communication, apologize when we screw up, and rectify it so it doesn't happen again.
Yeah. What do you wish people knew about running an IT department, whether large or small?
1,000 things can go wrong. And no one cares when everything's working, but everyone gets upset when it's not working. So it's a kind of a thankless job
Yeah.
because our role is to not to be transparent, to be just part of the fabric. And
Yeah.
but there are certain things working with my peers that we had to get in front of, and public safety is a perfect example. It's not
Sure.
if there'll be a problem, but when. So we had a bomb scare, we had a shooting, we had a murder. We had
Mm.
105,000 people show up for a football game in the fall. Well, I had staff running building security, video security, the sound. Public safety had police officers and all their team. We had 100 people working a game. So I needed to work with my peer. Every 4
Mhm.
weeks, we get together and talk about what events are coming up. What can we do differently? How can we improve? And he was a wonderful peer. Came, went to school at the Ohio State University, which was one of my
The
clients,
Ohio State.
one of my
Yeah.
best clients. And so we just hit it off. But our teams would come together once a year and do a tabletop exercise of something going wrong, a cybersecurity attack, ice storm, hurricane off the coast spinning tornadoes and knocking out the data center, network going down. We actually had one where the power went out. Well, we generate our own power. It's backed up by the
Oh,
utility. For the first
okay.
time in 20 years, the next year, the power went out. How, it was, you could, you know, we were prepared.
You were prepared.
and
You
then
had
and then when
practiced.
we weren't prepared, like a bomb scare, we had set procedures where we would all get on a conference call, public safety connected with leadership, and we would work it. We would work the problem. When the bomb scare happened, I was actually outside on the mall, not near a computer. I just had my phone, but the message came, join the call.
Wow.
Boom. And we
Wow.
worked bomb scare from the mall,
Wow.
which we needed to be outside anyhow. But
Yeah, but still, I mean, what I like about this story is it paints a very clear picture of how reliant we've all become and how we take it for granted. Those of us who don't work in IT, all these systems that run everything. As a big football fan, I've attended many games. And when I start thinking about all the different points of needing the IT department to be communicating effectively, knowing who's where and what's happening and monitoring all that. So team, I hope this is giving you also a new appreciation for the kind of work that Brad has done, throughout his career, and for people who are currently doing this work. I would, I guess, say go and thank your local IT person,
well,
whether you're in an
my
organization.
first year was H1N1 swine flu, 2009.
Oh,
And the
geez.
president asked, could we go online? And the answer was no, we couldn't. That was the time where I was sacked. The ball was fumbled because the
Yeah,
equipment was 8 to 10 years old. We had the
just couldn't do
buggy
it.
learning management system. The email system for students and faculty was 20 years old and couldn't scale. And I couldn't even buy the equipment anymore because they didn't make it. And
No, yeah.
so that scared me. And so over the 8 years, we moved as many of those services as we could to the cloud. So
Mhm.
my successor in March 2020 was able to increase Zoom, increase VPN licenses, and 70,000 people went online for a year to do
Wow.
teaching,
That's a huge, yeah,
research,
that's a,
work. Unbelievable. But it could not have
yeah.
happened without that. Each project took 2 years to move.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt
Mm-hmm.
good about that.
Yeah, that's a win, right? That's that question I asked, tell us a story about a time when you ran the ball into the end zone for that game-winning touchdown. The fact that you oversaw and were integral in every 2 years just moving you closer, when the pandemic hit,
That's
the
right.
university could continue. And I imagine there were organizations, I know there were, that didn't have that kind of infrastructure in place, and
Yeah, I
they
remember
they
one
were
of the
set back.
executives asking,
They were
"Now,
set
what's
back.
this cloud thing?" It's like it's where we're going.
Well, it's so mysterious to those of us who are not in that. It's like, does the cloud ever rain? What happens? Does it get too heavy? I mean, I know it's just it to me. It's magic. It's
Yeah,
magic that what you and I are doing
yep,
right now, having a
yep.
conversation over Zoom, which is cloud based, and all these things that I expect to work for me every day, and I will be honest, I have not had some
hmm
good moments when systems are down because I panic and think, and then you just go,
So I have
okay,
to tell
I can do
you,
something
one of
else
the
for a while.
perks of the
Well,
job
you know,
was the all access pass to the stadium. And I was,
that's a
on
great
the
perk.
field next
Yeah,
to Matthew McConaughey cheering the Longhorns. And my sound guy, I said hi to my sound guy, and he looks at me, he
nice.
goes, "Don't touch anything." Like I'm going to touch anything.
It's interesting you brought up Matthew McConaughey because when you told the story earlier about through Rotary going to Australia, I don't know if you've read his book Green Lights, but he did the same thing. He went to Australia, I think, through Rotary and represented
Yeah.
Texas for a year, and it's his story is really interesting. What happened there, the
Well,
family that he
I
was
know the
with,
book.
and
I'm going to buy it and
oh
read it.
man,
So,
yeah. Yeah, it's great. And I would recommend getting
oh,
the audio version because he reads it and he's
hmm
just such a character, and he brings to life the stories that I'm not against reading.
hmm
But I am such an auditory person that almost
So
now
one
I
time the
consume everything
Jumbotron
through my ears.
got like this. And I said to my wife, I said, that thing's coming down. It's going down. And then I said, I wonder if I run the scoreboard. She goes, you better go find out. So I run up to the press box, and I asked my sound guy, he's up in the press box, do I run the scoreboard? He goes, no, it's a contractor. And I look in the server room and there's this guy with cartoon sweat coming out of his forehead. And it turned out it was Microsoft Updates overrode a flag on the server to not update. And it turned out to be a known problem. It's like it was down for a quarter. Now we have a new Jumbotron, though, so much better.
Wow. Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure it's enormous too. Oh, wow. Well, listen, as we come to the end of this amazing conversation, Brad, tell us where people can get your book and where do you hang out online, all that good stuff.
I'm on LinkedIn, and I sent you a link that will help your listeners get access to a free sample of the book, another tab to find out how to get the book, audiobook or book, and then how to schedule time on my calendar. So
nice. Yep. And team, you know that links to buy Brad's book, connect with him on LinkedIn, check out his website, all that good stuff will be on his show notes page at pyppodcast.com. And as you can tell, he is somebody who's got a breadth of experience with some very practical wisdom about what it takes to lead in a complex world where we are dependent on things like the cloud and systems and all that good stuff. So as we wrap things up, is there anything that you didn't get a chance to share today that you would like to end our conversation on?
I would like to reinforce something I said at the beginning, which is get out of the office and let people know you give a damn.
And on that note, team, I'm going to wish all of you a great day. Brad, thank you so much for your time today. It was an amazing conversation, and I wish you all the best in retirement and with your book.
Thank you.
Hey team, Mary Lou here. Who's number one in football changes from year to year. Fashion trends come and go. Same with musical taste. Skills, they never go out of style. In fact, these days, leadership is an essential survival skill for a world that demands more from us than ever before. To succeed these days, you need to know how to show up for yourself so that you can then do the work you love with people you like the way you want. The Playbook helps you do this, and it's free. Go to pyppodcast.com to download your copy today. If being more successful this year, next year, in the 21st century is on your to-do list, get your copy of the Play Your Position Leadership Playbook now. pyppodcast.com. It's at the top of the page. You can't miss it. That's pyppodcast.com, and start being more of the leader you are meant to be today. This podcast was produced by Daniel Romeros. Show notes for this episode can be found over at pyppodcast.com. I'm Mary Lou Kaiser. Thanks for listening.
Here at the Play Your Position podcast, we believe that the road to self-mastery and a life well lived starts with answering the call to leadership. That's when the fun really begins. Send this episode to any friends who might need to hear the inspiration and ideas you heard today. And feel free to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform.